Oh, okay. Does he need that? That's true. Good evening. We're calling to order the December 7th, 2021 reorganization meeting of the Northern Lebanon School District. Thanks for joining us. In front of you, you'll have the reorganization meeting agenda, which has a list of those legally elected or appointed and qualified school directors, which we will affirm a few minutes from now by reading the certificates of election. At this point in the meeting, though, the only seated members are those holdover members. So I would ask that the board secretary call the roll for those members.
Bucks,
Here.
Erdman,
Here.
Fowler,
Here.
Marlowe,
Here.
Nom.
Here.
Thank you. It looks like we have 5 members present. All right. At this point in the meeting, we would traditionally, before we proceed to reading the certificates of election, because we're going to be taking board action to appoint officers, we would see if there's any public comment on issues of reorganization. Is there any public comment relative to the officers or reorganization or any of the dates and times and places for meetings that we've established on tonight's agenda? If so, you would go to the podium, state your name, and provide your comment. Was there any comment submitted online?
No, they were
Okay,
not.
hearing no public comment, now we move forward with the certificates of election. Madam Secretary, could you read the certificates of election for December 2021?
Yes. The certificate of election says, we, the undersigned members of the Lebanon County Board of Elections, hereby certify that after tabulating the votes cast at the municipal election held on November 2nd, 2021, the person named below has been elected to the office. These are Robert England, Kate Kimball Tazinski, David Klein, and Stacy Murray. And this is signed by the Lebanon County Board of Elections.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Now that we have confirmation from the Board of Elections as to those who were elected and their terms. It's time to elect a temporary president in order to move forward with your officer designations. So from the holdover members, the first 5 individuals that we called the roll for, could one of you make a motion, I believe, to appoint your designated representative for temporary president?
I move that Director Marlowe be the temporary president.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Are there any other nominees for the very temporary position of temporary president?
That feels really good.
Hearing no other nominees, is there a motion to close nominations?
I move to close nominations.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the proposed nominee for temporary president, Mr. Marlowe? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of Mr. Marlowe serving as temporary president for purposes of this meeting, say aye. Are there any opposed? The motion carries. At this time, I turn the meeting over to temporary president Marlowe, who at this time is now authorized to administer the oath of office to those individuals that we have read the certificates of election for. Mr. Marlowe, you can call individuals forward. They can stand and take the oath.
Okay, please stand to take the oath. Okay. Repeat after me. I do solemnly affirm that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. Thank you.
Thank you. You can be seated. At this time, I would ask the temporary president to open the floor for nominations for the position of president, and I will affirm that I've received a list of nominations indicating that there's at least one person with interest proposed tonight, and that is Barry Nam. So, Mr. Temporary President, can you request nominations of Mr. Barry Nam or any other nominees?
Yes, could I have a request of nominations for Mr. Barry Nam or any others at this point?
I'll nominate Barry Nam.
Very good.
Need a second on that?
Any other nominations?
Hearing none, you can do a motion to close.
Okay, hearing none, could I have a motion to close?
I motion to close nominations.
Could I have a second?
Second. Discussion, and then you can do a voice vote to close nominations.
Okay, any discussions on nominee Nam? Okay, no discussions. Could I get a voice vote?
So do you want to do a roll call or do you want to do ayes and nays?
We'll do a roll call.
Okay, Madam Secretary, could you do a roll call for the sole nominee, Barry Nam?
Sure. Bucks. England,
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Kimball Tusinski,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Marlowe,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
and Nam.
Yes.
All in favor of Nam.
Congratulations. New President Nam, you can take over the meeting. Thank you for your service, Temporary President Marlowe.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Next order of business then is to elect the permanent vice president. Do we have any current interested members for that position?
I think coming out of the nominations committee, I've received 2 names of interest, which we would need to see nominations for, Nate Erdman and Robbie England. So perhaps we can get some nominees from the floor.
Yes. Is there a nomination for Director Erdman to serve as vice president?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Erdman for vice president.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Other nominations? I
Yes.
believe there's also one for Robbie England. Does someone want to not make that nomination?
I nominate Robbie England for vice president.
Is there a second? I will second. Is there any other discussion? Are there any other nominations? Is there a motion to close nominations?
Motion to close nominations.
Is there a second?
Second.
That can be a voice vote. To close
Oh,
nominations.
thank you. All in favor of closing nominations, please respond with aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, nominations are closed. So we'll proceed to the vote. I believe that we have some ballots for vice president. Is that correct?
Yes, we do.
So secret ballots cannot be used in a sunshine law meeting. So we will go around the room and
Okay.
she'll call your name and you have to announce the candidate that you are voting.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
That's the proper procedure. Thanks for asking. So when your name is called, say aloud the name of the candidate you support and we will tabulate the votes.
Bucks,
Director Erdman.
England, Erdman, Fowler,
Director Erdman.
Jazinski,
Erdman.
Klein,
Erdman.
Marlowe,
Erdman.
Murray,
England.
Nom,
England,
7 Erdman, 2 England.
Three.
I had 6-3.
6-3.
Yeah. We'll just confirm that.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, great.
Does the board agree it was 6-3?
Yes,
Okay, we have
Yes.
a successful candidate.
terrific. Congratulations, Director Erdman, on vice president. At this time, I would just like to say thank you for your votes. Appreciate the confidence that you have placed in both Director Erdman and me. I especially wanted to thank Director Bucks for her service as president for the last 2 years. This goes without saying that the last 2 years were an extraordinarily difficult time that I think had Director Bucks known that that was going to be the duration of her presidency. Well, I don't know. She probably still would have done it and she would have done a good job. So I just wanted to thank Director Bucks for her service in that in a very, very difficult time. I'm looking forward to carrying on the process that has been done over the last 2 years of building a solid team. And I really look forward to working with each and every one of you. I think this is a fantastic board and a fantastic district. So appreciate your service. Thank you for what was done tonight. And thank you, Director Marlowe, for serving as the temporary president. We will move on to the reorganization agenda. We just have a few items. The next item is to establish the date, time, and place for regular board meetings for 2022. You have a document in front of you. Mrs. Say, is this something that we need to read into the record, or is this something that we can just vote on based upon what is on the document?
This motion was listed here on the agenda, those meeting dates that are already listed. and
Great.
Publicly available.
Then we'll just move on as well to the change order committee dates. Those are listed as well. These are public Zoom meetings accessible at the www.norleb.org/meetings site. And we'll take a vote on these two. Is there a motion to adopt the date, time, and place for regular board meetings and the change order committee meetings dates?
Motion to adopt.
Is there? Thank you. Just take a voice vote. All in favor of those dates, please respond with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Those dates are now established. The next item of business is to designate the newspaper for legal notices. At this time, the district employs the Lebanon Daily News. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. And I would suggest that that is probably the most likely option for us to use. If
Fortunately, I think it's our only option
Is it
as
the
a
only
local
one?
paper, but the fact that they only publish twice a week is a
Yeah.
problem, but I think it's our only choice.
so, the Patriot News is not an option.
It's
Not in the
it's not
county.
really considered of your region. And I would say this, it's a matter for the board, but this is something the legislature needs to pay attention
Yeah.
to. The advertising requirements, the cost of those, the difficulty of getting into a newspaper that's not everyday circulation is a huge administrative burden.
Yes, agree. With that said, we are required by law to designate a newspaper of general circulation. Is there a motion to designate the Lebanon Daily News as our paper of general circulation?
Motion to designate
Is there a
Lebanon
second?
Daily News.
Is there a second?
Second.
We'll take a voice vote. All in favor, please respond with aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move on to old business. We need to appoint some representatives at this point, and it looks like we currently have four vacancies. Those vacancies are in the Lebanon County Area Vocational Technical School Authority, the Lancaster-Lebanon Joint Authority, and then 2 committee chairpersons for the legislative representative and the PSBA liaison. We'll first start with the Lebanon County Area Vocational Technical School Authority. Is there anyone that is interested in serving in that role or has a nomination for somebody to serve in that position?
I think we have 2 of our business and assistant business manager and business manager that we would continue if the board so approves.
Okay.
And I would just note, this also can be done by the board president's designation if there is a volunteer.
Okay.
Without a vote.
No volunteers from the board? Then we will designate that the business manager will continue to perform that role until and unless we have a board member that's interested. Next is the Lebanon County Area Vocational Technical School Authority. Is there anyone that is interested from the board in serving in that role? The term is a 4-year term that expires on November 2024.
President, if Brooke says it's okay, we're checking into whether or not an employee can serve on those. I'm willing to serve on one, and Ms. Martin's willing to serve on one. So we're going to get a final answer
Okay.
to that. If that is the case, we will take the hit on that for you guys.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, you can just take that designation unless it's
Okay.
not acceptable and then appoint.
You're
it.
welcome.
Okay. Dr. Messinger, do you have a preference as to which one of those you would like
I
to
was
serve?
going to take whichever one was more of a commitment, and I can't remember which one is easier than, one of them's easier than the other one. Pat, do you remember?
One meeting a month, the other one is twice.
Okay, so I would do the Lancaster Lebanon one, and Ms. Martin would do the twice a year Lebanon County VOTEC School Authority.
And I'm looking at Ms. Martin. I assume that is an acceptable solution for you as well. Okay, very good.
Good answer.
Then let me verify that again. So, Dr. Meskier, you will be for which position again?
The Joint Authority, Lancaster Lebanon Joint Authority.
Okay,
And we do need to confirm that I'm allowed to do it.
yes. So I will appoint Dr. Messinger to serve in the Lancaster Lebanon Joint Authority, and I will appoint Ms. Martin to serve on the Lebanon County Area Vocational Technical School Authority pending review and approval by our solicitor. Great, thank you. Then the 2 committee chairpersons, we do have 2 vacancies. The first is the legislative representative and the second is the PSBA liaison. I would like to fill both of those seats with individual people. In the past, we have had a director serve in both roles, but I would certainly like to have one in each. Is there an interested person first for the legislative liaison?
Or either one.
Either one? Any other interests in the legislative liaison? Okay, then I will appoint Director Kimball Tzinski to the legislative representative chairperson. And is there an interest in the PSBA liaison position?
I would be interested in the PSBA.
Any others?
I would be as well.
And I would not fight you for that. So.
Do an alternate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel strongly either way, Director Bucks? Okay, I'll appoint Director Bucks as the primary and Director Marlowe as the alternate. Okay. Thank you. And then we just note for the record that Lebanon County CTC Joint Committee, Director Klein is currently serving as the member of that committee, and his term will expire on December 2022. And then the IU13 Board of School Directors, currently Director Murray is serving in that role, and her term expires on June 30th, 2023. That's all that I have for the reorganization meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn this reorganization? Is there a second? We'll take a voice vote. All in favor, please indicate with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you. So we'll have
We didn't have crazy like 4-4 votes. I've had that before. Oh my God. I'm always like, everybody needs to show up. There are no 8-member boards. It's the worst when that happens. You keep, no, you just keep going. You just keep voting until someone changes their mind. It's horrible. And then I will have to do like speeches that go like, all right, guys, like if one of you doesn't change your mind, we aren't reorganized. Exactly.
That one,
It's wild.
that one's more constrained. That one, long-term, but will continue to hinder us.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. This is December 7th. It is 6:29 p.m. This is the time and date set aside for the meeting of the Northern Lebanon School District Board of Directors. I call this meeting to order. Would just like to announce publicly that the board met in executive session prior to this portion of the meeting to discuss confidential personnel matters. Director Erdman, would you lead the board in a flag salute and moment of silence, please?
Would you please stand for a pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Take a moment of silence. Thank you, Mrs. Martin. May we please have a roll call for this formal portion of the meeting?
All members are present.
Thank you. Moving on to item 2, this is the adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as it has been presented?
Motion to approve the agenda as it's presented.
Is there a second? We'll take a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be counted in the affirmative unless you say nay or you abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to section 3, presentations. We have high school students of the month for December are Jaya Patel and Ella Whitman. This award is sponsored jointly by the Fredericksburg and Jonestown Lions Clubs, and each recipient will be recognized at a future meeting of the Lions Club. Is either of those students here? No, I don't think so. The middle school student of the month for December is Isabella Long. This award is sponsored by the Northern Lebanon County Rotary Club, and each recipient will be recognized at a future meeting of the Rotary Club as well. Congratulations to those students. Is our student board representative here tonight or on Zoom?
She could not attend and she does not have a report.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Martin. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 4, the superintendent's report. Dr. Messinger.
Yeah, just real briefly, and then we're gonna start something new tonight. But I do briefly want to say that it has slowed down a little bit for us, and we had a nice break, but we just had another leadership meeting, and one of the things we revisited was that long-term plan and our goals for this year. We have a mid-year in that long-range plan. There should be mid-year updates on our goals, our annual goals. So in January, we'll be revisiting those with updates from all of our buildings and district-wide in terms of how we're moving toward accomplishing our goals for this year. So it was nice to refocus on that and get started with it. The other thing I thought that we need to start doing is there are quite a few reports that we attach under, I believe, my portion that have to deal with budgeting and charter school costs and things like that, that we really don't touch on, that are sitting there and the public has them. But we're going to start getting Miss Martin involved in our meetings on a regular basis and have her kind of talk about those reports, anything that she thinks that she needs to draw attention to, she'll do that. And then in addition to that, if you have questions, she may not be able to pull numbers off the top of her head, unless she's good at that. But at least the following meeting, then she can come back with answers to those questions. So I'm going to turn over a portion of my report to Ms. Martin so she can update us on some financial stuff.
Thank you. So for tonight, I just wanted to go over and explain to you what all those reports are so that you know what you're looking at, because I know there's a lot there and we have some new board members. So I'll just go through those. And then in the future, like Gary said, I'll highlight some things on those reports or show you anything that's abnormal on those. And like he said, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me or send me an email beforehand and I'll explain it at the board meeting for you. So the first that is attached there are the disbursements reports. So there's 4 of those reports. There is one for each of our three funds and then a summary summarizing all three of those together. So the district maintains separate funds, one for food service, one for construction, and then a general fund. The general fund is where the majority of our business is handled. Salaries, benefits, books, supplies, athletics, transportation, et cetera, all comes out of the general fund. And those reports are sometimes really long. As you can see, it is everything that is paid on behalf of the district for the month. Your treasurer reviews those, and every board meeting, they are approved by the board. And those are the disbursements report. And like I said, there's 4 of those. And then we always have a charter school count. This report simply tracks the number of the Northern Lebanon School District students that are attending charter schools, and it varies each month. But our yearly costs for those are $28,900 for special ed students, and regular ed students cost us $12,500. And right now we have 122 students at the charter schools. And then there's reports called budget to expense or revenue summary. So there's one called budget expense summary and budget revenue summary. And these reports simply compare where the district is at by month end compared to the budget for revenue or expenses, depending on which one you have open. And if you have questions as we go on, I can certainly explain to you how our account code structures work, because you'll see that some of them are done by function code and some of them are done by object code, which I'm sure might be foreign language to some of you. But if you would like, I can certainly dive into those for you. And then the one that the report that, in my opinion, when you open it up, it is a lot to take in at first. And that is called the budget summary report. So this is a 1-page report. And you will notice that at first it breaks it out by revenue and expenses. The top half is the current year. The bottom half is the prior year. And it compares where we're at year to date using percentages from current year versus prior year. Obviously, there's sometimes large expenses that can be abnormal and impact the expense or percentages, but basically I like to look at the expenses and revenues percentages and just compare year over year where we're at to see. That's what I look at when I'm reviewing that report really quickly. And then at the bottom, I get a lot of questions on that. So the bottom part where it says budget change from prior year on that report is simply showing how the budget changed year over year in those different categories. And then also how the actuals are different year over year. So it's basically just the difference between the two on the bottom part there. And then I just wanted to really quickly give you guys a financial update and let you know that the auditors are going to be here at January's board meeting to present last year's financials to us. But I did want to let you know that our revenues exceeded our expenditures, which means we're adding to our fund balance. And as Gary and I had previously mentioned during our budget updates last year, we will be discussing and recommending to assign a portion of the fund balance towards either capital technical expenditures or else to increase our healthcare reserve or both. So we will be discussing all of that at January's board meeting.
And that'll be the first time that we've actually started a capital projects assignment, correct? We haven't done that in the past.
Since I've been here, yes.
And I'm thrilled that we're going to actually start planning for the future. I appreciate that. If you are a new board member, those are attachments within board docs that you can pull up and look at. What we'd like to do is dig into things that you might look at that and say, boy, why are we over here this year compared to previous years? And then start shooting those questions to Ms. Martin, and then we'll actually have her answer those questions for you here. So we can do a little more discussion on that throughout the year rather than just waiting until budget time to take a look. Okay. Thank you. That would be the end of my report.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Messinger. Item 5, old business. Is there any old business to discuss? We'll move on to public comment. Interested persons were asked to submit a written request to address the board this afternoon. I believe we do have one public comment. Ms. Tiffany Binkley, are you here?
I don't think she could make it. I was in contact with her today. I arranged a meeting with her on Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
We'll talk on Thursday.
Okay, very good, very good. Seeing that there is no additional public comment, we will move on to items 8 through 13, items for board action.
Okay, under number 8, those are our typical 3 items: approval of minutes from previous meetings, our student activity account, and our cash transactions.
Is there any discussion on item 8? Okay, we will move to a vote. we will do a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be counted in the,
Motion and a
Uh,
second on it.
thank you, thank you. Bear with me, folks, first day. Is there a motion to approve items 8.1 through 8.3? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, now we'll move to the vote. Your vote will be counted as an affirmative unless you say nay or you abstain. Motion carries. Moving on to item 9, budget and finance.
We have a new bus driver. We'll take as many as we can get. And then in addition to that, and some of you, this is old hat, and I did get a chance to go over it with new board members. The 2022-2023 budget opt-out resolution. What that is stating is that we are not planning on going over the index. The index this year is 4.3, correct? Okay. Is 4.3. It's the highest index I've ever seen. Even as a principal in terms of the time that I've spent looking at this. We did look at exceptions just to be certain. Our exceptions are minimal. I believe there's a special ed exception we could get for an additional $10,000 to go slightly over that. And there really isn't anything of any more substance than that. So there's really no advantage to looking any further at the exceptions. So what you're committing to is we'll be within that index. And then from there, we'll start the budget process. If we vote not to do that, then the next thing that happens, it changes our timeline on things, and Leanne files a budget in January, end of January, early February, right? Yeah, in that time frame with the state. That's somewhat meaningless. I should mention that you still could go higher. You could vote no and look to go higher, but then it would require a public vote. So those are the options. At this point with a 4.3 index, we brought it to you that we would probably stay within that.
Is there a motion to adopt item 9, budget and finance?
Motion to adopt item 9.
For second,
Second.
any discussion?
Yeah, I just have a couple items to just call out, and I will vote for this as well. I think just something to keep our eye on from a financial standpoint, and there's been internal discussion on this. Ms. Martin brought it up, and that was charter school. It's one of the reports that are put out on a monthly basis. We're at 122 right now. That runs us about $2 million a year as we speak. We budgeted about 1.2 for that. So that is a miss that we either need to figure out how we pull back or how we fund in some way as we go forward. And I know Gary and the administration's goal is to pull that back, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that probably as we move forward, maybe next month a little bit in terms of those plans. But that is a burden on us from a tax standpoint. I know this board's desire is that everyone that lives in this district can be educated in this school, and I think that should be our goal. Right, that we are the best educational option out there, without a doubt. And I think that may take some investment to get there. And I think we're talking about some of those investments. So, we're saying, hey, we have this big number that we need to pull down. We may need to make some investments to truly make Northern Lebanon what we know it can be and should be. But in the short term, it's a real burden. Aside from some legislative changes to our requirement on this and how we must pay, it's a burden that we just have to carry. And the one thing we can do is work on bringing those back. So that'd be my one comment. It's a big budget item, and it just gets bigger and bigger. I think 3-4 years ago it might have been 500,000. So now we're talking, $2 million.
Yeah, and a burden on the taxpayers that's unfair to them. But I do have Mr. Bruce coming in January to one of the meetings. We haven't decided which one yet, but he'll be here to update us. I had talked with Director Marlowe because we had talked a little bit about charter schools earlier today via email. And I had said that Mr. Bruce, who started in July, it took him a couple months, 2 months to just get a lay of the land and get familiar with what we are doing. And then he came to me a couple weeks ago and said, listen, I'm ready to start thinking about the future. He met with LLVS, he's met with Penn Manor, he's met with Accelerate, he's met with Ingenuity. I believe he's got some ideas. And frankly, there's been some changes moving forward that I think are going to benefit us. For instance, Accelerate now has coursework that can be put directly into Schoology that teachers can then edit. That would allow our V3 kids to have one platform instead of two. It would allow those classes to become more like Northern Lebanon classes rather than the canned version that we have right now. That a lot of people use Accelerate, but we want it to be closer to what we do here. So he's got some good ideas and has done a lot of background on this. And so he's going to come give us an update. But I do believe you're correct, Director Marlowe. There's going to have to be a little bit of investment if we want to really make this the product. I think in elementary, we made great strides. We're still, it's a difficult change. You have a little experience with that this year. The synchronous component of elementary with both reading and math, I think has been a tremendous step in the right direction. But then we get to middle school and high school, and there's still frustration with not being able to talk to a teacher during the day because they are teaching in-house students. So we have some ideas. We'll talk about that more in January, but that's the plan. Now, this does not impact that, but from a budgetary standpoint, yes, it's a piece of it, no doubt.
I think the only other thing I call out on there that Ms. Martin shared with me, I think earlier today, was if you look through the budget items and you'll see an item that is much larger than last year, it's medical expense. I think that's probably the only other, and it might be in the benefits category. Is that accurate? It's the only other item that I would say has a wild swing to it. And if I'm not mistaken, last year we were well under. And with medical expenses, I mean, that is the nature of it. You have good years and then you have bad years. And so you're seeing a swing in that right now. But that's the only other thing that I saw within the financials that I would say looked, brought my attention to it.
Thank you, Director Marlowe. Is there any other discussion on this item? Okay, we will take a vote on item 9.1. This will be a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be counted in the affirmative unless you indicate no or that you abstain. Motion carries. Moving to item 10, building and grounds.
Yeah, only one item. As you know, we went out to bid on the project, concession stand project, and those bids have come in. The numbers are listed there. I asked, Scott is here, and I believe James from Fidavia has joined us online. They're going to just kind of outline where we are with that and, talk about a few options, and then they have to make a motion and decide whether or not to proceed with that bid. I will say one thing that's not an option is tabling it for a future month. If we do that, it effectively does it for a year. If they don't start procuring now, they definitely will not have it ready for the fall. And if that's the case, it would have to wait. So it's accepting it or it's rejecting it, but tabling it, moving it back a month it won't fit in the timeline. Scott, thanks.
Sure, yeah. Just a brief presentation here, just to update you on the results of the bids. We did receive bids on Friday. Once again, similar to the elementary school, we did have a good amount of coverage. You'll see there we had 3 GCs, 8 HVACs, 10 plumbing contractors, and 3 electrical bidders. So we had good coverage across the board. We did have some debriefs with a couple of the bigger contractors who were the apparent lows on the general and the electrical side, and they both commented that they had good coverage across the board with their subcontractors as well. So what that tells us is the numbers that that accompanied with the fact that across all those different bids, the numbers were really tight. It wasn't like we had numbers all over the board. So that accompany, those two items tell us that for the scope of work that we put out there, the numbers that we received back are accurate with today's market. I will note the costs. We were here in about 5 months ago with the elementary school bids and talking about the increase in cost, the increase in materials, material availability issues, things like that. And a question was asked to me, well, is this going to continue, or are we going to see a decline? And our answer was no, this is going to continue. The costs are going to continue to increase. And this is kind of evidence of that even it has gone beyond what we anticipated back in the summer, and it's kind of become something that's very, very difficult to get your finger on the pulse. I'm sure you all listen to the news, you hear about shipping containers sitting out in California, and material availability and lead times, and just a lot of cost increase. And that's kind of what we're in currently. So if you go to the next slide, and James, at any time, if you want to offer any other insight, feel free to interrupt.
No problem.
So there you can see the results of the bidding. The total amount of bids between all the prime contractors was a little over $8 million. The general contractor, the low bidder there, was the same contractor that you have on the elementary school. It was Lobar Incorporated, at just over $6 million. The HVAC contractor, low bidder there, was North Bay Mechanical at about $353,000. The plumbing contractor was SM Friday Mechanical Contracting, a little over $500,000. And electrical contractor was also the same contractor you have on the elementary school at about $1.1 million.
And just to clarify on the agenda, there is an alternate that was taken that makes that number. Those are the base bids, but there was an alternate that was taken that increases it slightly. Just to be clear on that, the alternate that was put on there was the ability to use. We've been really transitioning to badges with the entries on the doorway. There's a lot of advantages for that. You can turn them off, one. So if someone no longer supposed to have access, you can discontinue that. If someone loses it, you can discontinue it. And in addition to that, you can track, if someone's supposed to be and not supposed to be in there, and they're in there at a certain time of night or whatever, you have the ability to look at that as well. So that was the alternate that was added.
So as I mentioned before, this is escalated further beyond what we originally anticipated and beyond what we were estimating. So it is beyond that preliminary budget we established, but we do feel that this is accurate for the scope of work that was put forth and designed at the direction of the district. So we go to the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of options you have moving forward. Obviously, first option is you can approve the bids as they are. If you remember, on the elementary school, we were in excess of the budget on that project as well. We had some time between receipt of bids and award of bids to do a little homework and do some cost reduction efforts with the apparent low contractors. This project, we don't have that opportunity before award of bids, just because the timing of everything. If you recall, we were trying to get this project done a lot sooner. However, through the land development process and approval process, that kind of kicked the schedule out and kind of really tightened the time frame that we have to interact with contractors. However, with that being said, we still would have the ability, if you do choose to award the bids, to pursue some of those cost reductions throughout construction. You lose a little bit of the leverage, being that it's post-bid award, but there's still that possibility, and the fact that Lobar and McCarty, two of your higher cost contractors, that we've been through that process before, we feel confident we can go through something similar. I will say, it's not going to be in the order of magnitude of the elementary school. This is a smaller scope of work, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get that level of dollars out of the bids just from a cost reduction standpoint. That's what brings us to our next two options. And this is really options 2 and 3. If you decide to reject the bids, the goal there would be, if the $8 million is just not palatable and you want to bring the cost down significantly, you're not going to do that through just working with the current contractors. You're really going to have to redesign the project, change the scope of work, eliminate some of the parts and pieces of it, and then rebid it in order to get any significant cost savings out of there. As I mentioned before, based on the numbers, based on everything we're seeing, these numbers are accurate with the scope of work. So the only way, and we've said this before, we don't see it declining. It's got to level out at some point because the market just can't handle these prices going the way they are. But we just don't know, no one has a crystal ball. We can't tell you in a year, are prices going to come back and check? Are they going to level out? Are they going to increase? We just don't know. What we do know is the only way, if the desire is to get a considerable amount of cost out of this project, the only way to do that would be to redesign and rebid it. So there's two options under that. You could reject the bids, reduce the scope of work and rebid it sometime in the next, anywhere from 6 to 10 months, and look at a summer 2023 completion and bid it maybe the summer of 2022 or the fall of 2022 after the redesign has been done. There are two pieces of that project that you might consider doing earlier. One is you need to still provide power to the field lighting. If you recall, that was a piece we provided the lights for the field. The power was going to come when we did the field house, simply because there needs to be an upgrade to the service that happens with the bigger project. So you'd have to, we would recommend you somehow look at taking that on in the interim. So you do have the field lighting before the project is rebid. And then we know the bleachers is the stadium is a kind of higher priority from a safety standpoint. So there's a potential to break that out as a separate project. I will say that once again, as Dr. Messer mentioned, we're up against it with the schedule. If we look to reject bids and do something different with the bleachers, it might look different, like only half the bleachers being complete for the fall sports season next year. But we can bring those options to the board if that's the desire. And then a third option is just a different version of that, rather than simply just wait, 6 to 10 months and rebid it. Do the same thing, redesign it, rescope it, but wrap it in with the high school project. So we all know that this building is one of the buildings that needs a lot of need, and there's an upcoming project to renovate that building. And when you do wrap a project like that, a small scope project, into a larger scope project, there's a little bit of economy of scale. Now, if that high school project is 2 or 3 years down the road, does that economy of scale overweigh escalation? That can be a question that can be answered. But so those are kind of the three options that we see before you. And as at the little footnote at the bottom, obviously we don't have the option to award bids or think about it until January, just because of the timing and the approval process that led us to bid this late in the process. So questions?
I have a few questions. When we're looking at the possibility of potentially redesigning that project, when we look at the project, the $8 million, do you have a sense for how much of that is site development, how much of that is materials? And I guess what I'm getting at is, if we have a footprint right now that is roughly equivalent to the footprint of another one that redesigned, do you have a sense for how much we might actually save if we were to take a room off or to take square footage off? I mean, are we looking at real savings by redesigning a different building structure?
It depends on what your appetite is for how much you want to take off. Obviously that building was put together as a way to meet your current needs. So
Right.
What needs do you want to take off that? Just to give you some numbers, kind of to put things in perspective. When we did de-scope with some of the contractors, the field house, the building itself, the field house, which includes the concessions, the restrooms, the 3 locker rooms, some equipment storage, some referee areas and things like that. The building and the canopies and everything like that was about $5.26 million. The rest of that was site work. So you have about $1.8 million in site work, which included redoing the parking drives. And then also there was some township required improvements through the land development process that equated just shy of $500,000. And then the last piece of it was the bleachers, which were about $900,000 for the bleachers, and then some extra for the foundations and building demos. So you could probably say a little over $1 million for the bleachers.
But it sounds like if we want to fulfill those needs, the bulk of that project, we're not really looking at significant reductions if we were to redesign.
Yeah, if you're looking to still, offload some of the burden on the school here and bring some of the locker rooms down there. Yeah, I mean, you would have to make some pretty drastic changes in order to see a significant savings, like elimination of the team rooms or obviously I don't think from a safety standpoint, you don't want to forego the bleachers, but that's another $1 million there.
Right.
Township improvements, you really can't get away from. Once you disturb over an acre, you have to go through the land development process.
Just for clarification, second question, the $8 million does include completion of the lighting for the field hockey soccer field, correct?
Yeah, it
Okay.
includes providing new electrical service to the concessions building, and then from there backfeeding the lighting to the multipurpose field.
Okay.
And
then
it includes a small section of bleachers for the multipurpose field.
Okay. And then the last question that I have, and this is kind of a general question, applies to the elementary school as well. When we're looking at changes in materials and those costs, from a contractor standpoint, are you or is the contractor purchasing most of those materials up front? So the significant materials are already purchased, so we would expect that those costs would stay relatively flat for the duration of the project?
Very good question. So they're going to try to purchase as much upfront as they can. But know that this is a publicly hard bid. So we don't have any escalation clauses in there. So if the cost of steel for the bleachers doubles between now and when they can actually place the order or actually get it on site, it's on them. And I think that's another reason why you're seeing some of these costs increase beyond. We're hearing stories like for roofing insulation that the supplier of the roofing insulation is saying, telling the contractor, I'll give you a budget price. I'm going to tell you what I think it might cost, but I'm not going to tell you what you're actually going to pay for it until I have an order in place and when you actually buy it. So they're really having a lot of hedging of the bet, and I'm assuming that that's a lot of reason for the additional costs here is that they have to take the burden when they place their bid and I think we heard from one of the contractors that just from the time they place the bid till when we talk to them, they've already lost that advantage. There's already a price increase and they lost them that, but that would not be passed on to the district.
Just to clarify that you said small amount of bleachers, it's actually it's 800 for the multi-purpose field.
Right.
And for us, that's big. So it's that whole set of bleachers that we had discussed before. Seats 800.
I have a question. If we would consider delaying this and wrapping it in with a secondary building renovation, there's still things that we have to address in order to be able to use what is there now, correct? Like, we wouldn't be saving the whole 8 million. We would still have to do some of this anyway in order for it to be usable, like the lights. We have the wiring, but we actually need the lights.
Yeah.
What kind of cost would that be?
That's a good question. I guess it depends on where you draw the line at what you need right away and what you need in the future. Certainly, if you want to use the lights, you got to power them. And the issue with that is the existing service to the existing concession stand doesn't have the capacity to power both sets of lights. So you'll be bringing in a new service for that. I don't have a breakout of that number. In our internal discussions, we've always heard that the bleachers are a dire need just from a safety standpoint. That's another $1 million. So, whether you choose to do that, it all depends on where you draw that line as far as what do you need to do right away versus down the road.
Before we bid, what did we expect? Or maybe the better question is, before COVID, what did we expect that number would come in at?
Well, we actually started this process just as COVID was starting. And we started at a $3-something million budget. Now, with the caveat that there has been increase in scope, as we plan out the project and saying, well, we really want to address this and fix this. So the scope of work has increased over that time, but we've also escalated over that time. And we're I think about a 5.5 is where we thought we would end up based on the elementary bids and
Plus and then that didn't include the improvements at Bethel Township, though, required.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
Which was $500,000.
Yep.
About 6. James, you have anything?
Yeah, as Scott had mentioned earlier, this is somewhat of a crystal ball, and we're in unusual times at the moment. We were anticipating to try and, with the way the markets were playing at the moment and the employment markets, etc., we were anticipating it being a much better environment for this project. But alas, that has not happened, and we're still seeing a lot of turmoil. And as Scott mentioned, that the contractors are putting a lot of money into this to cover their bases. There is a lot of items like even the steel and the aluminum. Those costs are still pretty high, and we're seeing it all the way through construction on other projects where we're having major issues with the just delivery of the materials. So contractors are putting a little bit extra in there to cover for that unforeseen to a degree. So it's a tough time at this moment in time trying to get a good project and an excellent project like this with the good numbers.
So you mentioned that if there are additional costs, those would be picked up by the contractors. If there is any savings, is there any possibility that we would realize any of that, or is
Yeah, I
it pretty
think,
much a set cost?
yeah, I think that's definitely something we would do that, if we had the time before award of the bid, we would be working on that right now with them. I think like we did with the elementary school. I think that's something definitely that we'll still pursue. If you decide to award bids, that it's not going to be, here's the number. We're still trying to get some of those costs down and get deeper into the scope of work and seeing where we could. Now that's going to come with changes, so we'll, just like the elementary, we'll bring those changes before you and evaluate them against the cost and see if you want to pursue them.
Okay, not hearing any other questions. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for answering these questions. I guess I have a last question for the administration. So the funding, how are we funding this portion of the project?
Board donations. It's wrapped up into the bonds that were, yeah.
Okay. And all right, well, we'll move on. I think what we'll do at this point is I will receive a motion to approve the bids. If for whatever reason the vote does not carry, then we will need to pursue, I believe, motions on how else we might proceed. But is there a motion to approve?
I didn't have any questions, but I wanted to have a.
Yep. Well, so we'll do a motion in a second and then we'll have discussion on that. Is there a motion to approve the bids? Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Director Klein?
We talk about, the lockers, the concession, the lighting, the bathrooms. I spend a lot of time down there, and I've been in frat houses that have better bathrooms. It's horrible. Oftentimes, this is what someone thinks in Northern Lebanon when they come visit. Schools are giant community centers. We need all this stuff. I don't think we can predict what the future, talked about prices leveling out. He didn't say prices are going to decline. It's so hard to predict what's going to happen. I'm ready to go ahead and make all these improvements. I don't think there's anything we can really cut out. And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I'll just add that when I saw the bid come out, my gut reaction was, it was pretty big. And I would agree with Director Klein, though, that the sports fields, the auditoriums, those things, it is part of the community center part of what we do. And that's one of the reasons I think, we continue to pay taxes if we have kids in school or not, and we need to make sure that those facilities are top notch also. That being said, when I saw that, then my first reaction was, will it delay any of our other other projects that we also feel are very necessary? If you've spent any time in this building and walked through it, if you've ever used the bathrooms in, when you're here for a play or something like that, you would see that, this building was built in the 50s, and yep, it's been renovated a few times, but it needs a lot of work as well. So I would hate to see those projects that we've talked about jeopardized as well. That being said, let's say $2 million difference that we're seeing from what we kind of expected to, what we're hearing now, that will not delay, in my opinion, that project. I mean, we have a cap of, Ms. Martin, it's 225% of revenue, right? It's kind of our debt cap. And that's what would keep us from borrowing to ultimately do a project. That 2 million is not going to make the difference between that. I mean, I think we could change the scope of a project to still continue a project and make sure that it happens. So once I got past that, I felt like, yep, this is still kind of the right decision. Those future projects, that's another story in terms of, what is going to happen with, what's going to happen with price, right? Because you're right. I think we've leveled. Doesn't mean we're going down. The other watch out is that rates are going to go up, right? I mean, that there's no one now that's not saying the rates are going to go up. So, the borrowing right now on this is smart borrowing, just in my opinion. So that'd be my 2 cents on it. I think it's good investment from a community standpoint, good investment from a school standpoint. And it does not immediately jeopardize what we want to do going forward in terms of enhancing this building and doing the adjustments to this building.
Any other discussion? Okay, given the scope of the questions that were presented to Crabtree and the discussion here, Mrs. Martin, I would like to take a roll call vote on this. And again, the motion is to approve the bids as are spelled out in item 10.1A.
Erdman,
Yes.
England,
Yes.
Fowler,
Yes.
Kaczynski,
Yes.
Murray,
Yes.
Klein,
Yes.
Marlowe,
Yes.
Nom,
Yes,
Bucks.
Yes.
motion carries. Thank you. Thank you again to Crabtree Rohrbaugh for providing that information. All right, we'll move on to item 11 on the agenda, extracurricular agenda.
We got 2 items. One, there's a trip that the marching band takes down to Florida. It's not annual. It's every 4 years, I believe. Thanks, Scott. And then also, but that's for January 2023. And then also we had 2 volunteer coaches added to the revised winter coach list. Pat, do we highlight those for them so they can see the changes when they go on there?
They're highlighted.
They're highlighted. Okay, good. So hopefully those caught your eye. Those are the 2 items.
Is there a motion to approve item 11.1?
Motion to approve item 11.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? This will be a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be counted in the affirmative unless you say no or that you abstain. Motion carries. Moving to the curriculum agenda, item 12.
2 policies that are in final adoption, electronic signatures and our food services policy. We have 1 curriculum that was finished. This is the tentative adoption. Remember that you have till January to look more closely at that. Spanish for healthcare. And that, if that's approved, that goes on the career planner. And then if there's enough interest, we would offer. And if there's not, we wouldn't. So, but the curriculum is there for you to look at. And then I'm going to do my best to explain this, but the way we currently have our ag program set up, as you know, that's a popular program for us and a great program for us, is there are two different codes that students are placed into. One is a horticulture code and the other is just a general ag code. Currently, we only offer 2 horticulture classes. And so what we're being told by PDE, whoever oversees ag, is that you don't need both codes. We can still offer the 2 horticulture classes to kids in the ag program, but have the general code, and having 2 codes really doesn't help us in any way. We're dual enrolling them at this point. But you don't get funding based on the count in this code plus the count in this code. It's funding based on the names. So it really is something that we don't need. And the recommendation was to terminate that old code, the horticulture code, and just continue with the general ag code.
Is there a motion to adopt item 12.1?
That makes sense to you.
Adopt.
Is there a second? Oh,
Yeah, 12.1, sorry.
pardon me, Director Murray. Is there a second? Thank you. Any discussion? This too will be a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be counted in the affirmative unless you say no or that you abstain. Motion carries. Moving to item 13, Human Relations Agenda.
Yep, and I'll go through these and then you can discuss any one that you want to. We obviously, some of them are pretty straightforward. Professional substitutes, item A, are listed there for you to add. Also classified substitutes, item B, are listed. We are looking at hiring some district sub positions that we would get to assign those subs to help us cover some holes. As you know, the sub fill rate is not very good, really across the state. And this gives us the ability to have a little more flexibility with some folks. The benefit for them is they get paid at a higher rate. The benefit for us is we get to assign them to the biggest areas of need each day. We have a leave request that is on there. We have another an uncompensated leave, an item E for Mr. Poole. We have a resignation. It's my understanding that Mr. Wall is going to start looking into his college options. So good for him. Excited for him. Also have a few employment positions there under G number 1. We have a short-term substitute currently in for music, but he is crossing the threshold into long-term, so he'll change over to that. We had a special ed opening created by a teacher that had moved to another district, and we have someone that we hired for that, and we're recommending. Also have another long-term sub position that we are extending to add additional support in our autistic support classroom. I think I've talked about that and the need there. And then item 4 is one that we have. She is listed as a sub for us. She was approved as a sub for us. However, we've been utilizing her also to help in the autistic support classroom. However, it's for the tail end of a day. She's actually spending all day here student teaching. And then at 2:30 has been going to Fredericksburg and helping in the autistic classroom with packing up, getting kids on vans and taking advantage of that. The problem is we don't have a mechanism to pay those subs at the hourly for 1 hour of time. So we took the daily sub rate and divided that out over a typical teacher day and came up with an hourly rate. So we're actually retroactively going back now and we'll pay her at the hourly rate for a substitute rather than a substitute rate for the entire day, if that makes sense. And then number 5, also with the uncompensated leave that's on there, that would be a long-term sub that we would put into that position. Number H, or letter H, is a mentor for Mrs. Erdman and Mr. Baird. And also I would be a tenure for Lori Lowe effective 12/19/2021. And that's it.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve agenda item 13.1?
Motion to approve agenda item 13.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I just have one question, and that is about the full-time substitutes. Because they're full-time, would they be receiving benefits as well?
You know, to be honest with you, and this is something that a human resources person has really helped us with. If they are working for us on a daily basis like this, they are eligible anyway. And so they would be eligible. And our intention is to give that to allow them to accept that for this year. You can do it two ways. You could wait until the end of the year, make sure that they really truly were eligible, and then grant it to them next year. But we've decided to just go ahead and offer that at this point. Because we're self-funded, the cost is minimal unless there's a major medical concern.
That's good.
Any other discussion? Okay, this will be a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be counted in the affirmative unless you say no or that you abstain. Motion carries item 13.1 in its entirety. Moving on to item 14.1, these are information items.
Information items, letter A. Mrs. Harris will be moving to grade 2 teacher. Ms. Reber is coming off of a leave. She will be at Jonestown for V3. We have a student, Alvernia, that's going to student teach at elementary in the spring, East Hanover. We have some library books that have been collected and donated to Book Savers. And then we also have a former NL graduate who's coming back to be a school counseling intern with Mrs. Klein.
Great. Any discussion on the information items? Okay, we'll move to the reports of the representatives. First, with the change order committee, Director Bucks, Fowler, or Marlowe, anything to report?
I'm not sure if it's new news, but we did have the compaction issue over there that ultimately came in lower than we approved from a change order standpoint. I think the initial was going to be $90,000 due to issues with compaction of the ground and putting in the footers. When they actually got into it, my understanding is it was less. I don't know how much less.
Yeah, they haven't given us the change order yet. So, and they also are still working on some of the, let's wait and see that when we're going to get the change. We had some, as you know, some soil issues over there. And they've tackled it fairly well, but I'm going to wait and give you a number. They're going to draw up an official change order, and we'll give you an exact number when that's all said and done. But the good news is, as I have explained a little bit, is that there's a contingency fund built into all of these projects. There's also one for the field house as well. So if something goes wrong, what happens is some of these change orders, unless you just had something that's really, really unusual and expensive, you have a change order. Yes, it costs you money, but it really comes out of it comes out of that final bid contingency fund. It doesn't increase the number of the final bid. If we don't hit that number in the contingency fund, we get that amount back, which is always exciting. But that's kind of where we're at. And I'm hesitant. On Friday, we had a good report. They had hit shale, and I was excited. Today, it wasn't as good in another area. And so in the end, hopefully it comes close to balancing out. But they will draw up an official change order for us that we'll vote on.
Okay, Career and Technology, Director Klein, do you have anything to report?
I got a few things to report. The first one is 3 programs in the medical fields: health careers, LPN, and medical assistants. Those programs are finding out there are requirements to get a mandated vaccine to complete their clinicals, in order to get into some medical facilities, they need to be vaccinated. That's one thing the CTC director and the attorney is working through to find out how to best meet those needs of every student and meet those requirements at the same time. Some of the chefs at CTC are exploring the use of a food truck. They thought that would be a really fun way to get kids out there to get an entrepreneurial spirit and also make some food and showcase what they can do around different events around the county. So I'm looking forward to that. And the director is also he's in the beginning stages of looking into like a veterinarian tech program. So it could be a little while, but he has expressed some interest, and so has the Joint Operating Committee expressed some interest in exploring that option. That's all I got.
Good report. Thank you. IU 13, Director Murray.
I don't have a report beyond what's already been sent to you as board members, so thank you.
Great, thank you. And then pursuant to our reorganization, we do have new legislative liaison director Kimball Tazinski. Not asking for a report unless you have something to report, in which case I'd be very impressed. No report. And then similarly for the PSBA, Director Bucks is now the liaison for PSBA, with Director Marlowe serving as the alternate. Anything to report from either of you?
I'll say ditto. on that one.
Great. Thank you. Last item on our formal agenda is new business. Is there any new business? Then
I do not anticipate the need for a meeting next week.
okay, great. Yes, I was just going to note that dates to remember, our next committee meeting is scheduled for January 4th, 2022. We do not currently have a board meeting scheduled for next week unless something happens that would require that. So absent any other new occurrences, you can see the other important dates on item 18. Is there any discussion on dates to remember? Hearing none, we will move to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Before we adjourn, before we take a vote, I just would like to state once again, welcome to our two new board directors, Director Kimball Tazinski and Director England. Looking forward to having you on the board. And again, I just wanted to publicly state thank you to Dr. Bucks for leading this board for 2 very, very difficult and challenging years. We appreciate it highly, and we are looking forward to another great year at the Northern Lebanon School District. This will be a unanimous roll call vote. Your vote will be counted in the affirmative unless you say no or you abstain. Motion carries. Hearing no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Have a happy Christmas and a great new year.